Let me be real with you for a second. Everyone's been talking about the Blue Jays pitching staff like that's the only story worth telling this spring. Berrios dealing with stuff, Trey Yesavage already sidelined, the rotation looking patchy heading into April. Yeah, all of that's real, but while everyone's fixated on the mound, something else has been sitting in the background that nobody's really digging into. And honestly, it might be the bigger problem. The lineup, not the pitching, the lineup. Because when you actually sit down and look at this projected batting order, not from a highlight reel perspective, but from a can this group consistently score runs over 162 games perspective, there are some legitimate questions that don't have clean answers yet. And with opening day right around the corner, that's a problem worth talking about. Start at the top. George Springer. The guy had an absolutely ridiculous 2025 season. 309 average, 399 OBP, .959 OPS, 32 home runs. That's a 161 OPS plus. That's not just good, that's one of the best offensive seasons any Blue Jay has had in years, and he's carried it right into spring training. 3 of 13 average, 405 OBP, 968 OPS this spring. The man is locked in. Nobody's disputing that. The question isn't whether Springer can produce. The question is whether a 36-year-old can sustain that level over a full season. And look, I'm not here to bury him. He hasn't given us any reason to think he's slowing down. But peak seasons at 36 are rare. They happen. Springer might be one of the exceptions. But if there's even a slight regression, not a collapse, just a step back toward league average production, the top of this lineup loses a huge chunk of its engine, and when that engine stalls, the whole lineup feels it. Then, right behind him, you've got Daulton Varsho batting second. He gives you pop. 20 home runs last year, .833 OPS, 122 OPS plus. That's a real contributor. But his 284 OBP is the number that keeps coming back. That's a problem for a guy slotted that high in the order, because if Springer gets on and Varsho can't work a count, can't get on base consistently, you're already looking at situations where Vladdy comes up with nobody on and a wasted opportunity sitting in the dugout. That's how lineups stall, not dramatically, quietly, pitch by pitch, inning by inning. And that brings me to the guy everything runs through, Vladimir Guerrero Jr. I don't need to spend a lot of time convincing you he's good. .292 average, 381 OBP, 467 slugging, 23 home runs, 84 RBIs, 133 OPS plus in 2025. He is the anchor. He is the guy. And that's exactly what makes this whole conversation uncomfortable. Because when one player is that central to everything your offense does, the margin for error everywhere else shrinks. If Springer regresses, if Varsho's not getting on base, if the guys around Vladdy aren't doing their jobs, it doesn't just hurt the lineup. It isolates him. It turns him into a guy swinging for solo shots instead of driving in runs with traffic. And that's a totally different hitter. Now here's where it gets interesting, because the Blue Jays aren't without answers. Addison Barger is one of them. His 2025 numbers were a mixed bag. 21 home runs, 756 OPS, but a 243 average and 301 OBP. Inconsistency written all over it. This spring, though, he's hitting .278 with a 366 OBP and a 977 OPS. 3 home runs, 12 RBIs in 36 at-bats. That's a guy who came into camp with something to prove and has been doing exactly that. If that version of Barger shows up in the regular season, the middle of this lineup gets a whole lot more dangerous. He becomes a legitimate protection piece. The lineup gets harder to navigate for opposing pitchers. That matters. And then there's Kazuma Okamoto, and I genuinely don't know what version of him we're going to see. This spring, the numbers are eye-popping. 417 average, .563 OBP, .9117 slugging, 1.479 OPS. That's video game stuff, but I think the more honest number to look at is his World Baseball Classic line. Facing elite international competition that's closer to what a major league pitcher looks like. He hit .211 with a 318 OBP and a 634 OPS. That's the calibration. That's the tension. Which version of Okamoto shows up in April, in May, in August when the league has had time to figure him out? The optimistic case is that he's a special talent who adapts fast. Plenty of NPB guys have come over and figured it out. If Okamoto is one of those guys, the Blue Jays suddenly have a piece in that lineup that nobody fully knows how to plan for yet. That's a real weapon. The cautious case is that the adjustment takes time, the league exposes a hole in his swing, and he's a below-average bat for stretches of the season. Both outcomes are possible, and right now, nobody knows which one is coming. Look, the bottom line is this. The Blue Jays have talent. There's no argument there. This isn't a rebuilding roster. This isn't a team that's piecing things together, hoping for a miracle. Springer and Guerrero alone give you a foundation that most teams would take. Jesus Sanchez, Jimenez, Kirk, there's depth here. The pieces exist. But depth and certainty aren't the same thing, and that's the real issue going into opening day. This lineup has multiple question marks that could either resolve themselves and make Toronto a genuinely terrifying offensive team, or compound on each other and make the offense a consistent source of frustration all season. Springer regression, plus Varsho's OBP, plus Okamoto's adjustment period, plus Barger reverting to his 2025 inconsistency, stack those together and this lineup underperforms in a big way. Flip it the other way, Springer stays elite, Barger locks in, Okamoto figures it out, and you're looking at one of the best offenses in the American League. The pitching conversation was always going to be there this spring. That's valid. But the lineup is the story that's been flying under the radar. And when the season starts, it's going to answer a lot of questions very quickly. Whether those answers are good or bad, that's what's going to define the Blue Jays 2026.